All right. I think we're good here. Okay, so welcome to our Holy Land presentations, day 2. And we've got, let's see, 98 slides this time instead of 137, which we had last week. And so we'll get through this. We visited Bethsaida, the Valley of the Doves, Noph Ginnasar, the Jordan River, and Magdala on, the second day. And so let's just open with a word of prayer. Gracious God, I want to thank you so much for our time together today. Thank you for the gift of fellowship and conversation. And we just ask that as we see these images and pictures and hear these stories, that you might use them to help us grow in our faith. For this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So day 2. So our first stop was Capernaum. And Capernaum was kind of considered to be the home base of Jesus. This is where he did about 70% or so of his ministry out of Capernaum. He would stay here and then he'd go out into the surrounding areas. Capernaum was a fishing village established during the time of the Hasmoneans, located on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee. It had a population of about 1,500 people. Archaeological excavations have revealed 2 ancient synagogues, both are built over the other. Also a house that was turned into a church by the Byzantines, and it was believed to be the home of St. Peter. The village was inhabited continuously from the 2nd century BC to the 11th century AD, when it was abandoned sometime before the Crusader conquest. Shrink that up. So this was the entrance, and of course it was all gated in. And we actually had to walk a little bit to get here because the parking area was quite a ways away. And I think this is where the bathrooms were. And that was a funny thing too. I forgot to mention this morning.
I got a picture of it, I think.
Yeah, you had to pay to use the
You had to pay to
bathrooms.
go to the bathroom. Yes,
But it wasn't very much.
a dime,
was it?
I think, or something.
A dime?
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, it was $1.
Was it $1?
Yeah.
So,
I'm
yeah.
sure, I just don't, I may have got that when I came out instead of going in.
Okay. Some of the
That's when
places
we used it.
were pretty public and you didn't need to pay, but some places like this you did. So I think it was just a way to help support cleaning it, and because a lot of tourists come through, I can imagine.
And they needed a lot of people in because it was not.
It wasn't very well.
No, it was not.
Sculpture here. And so you can really see the ruins, and this is all this black basalt. It's volcanic rock, pretty much all of this. The northern part of the Sea of Galilee is in a ancient volcanic area, so a lot of the stone up there is this black basalt. So a lot of the homes and the buildings are built out of it. You'll see it when we see pictures at the very end of Magdala. When we went there, all of those stones are all black as well. So Capernaum was the hometown of the tax collector Matthew, also the apostles Simon Peter, Andrew, James, and John. On both sides of an ample north-south main street arose small districts bordered by small cross-sectional streets and no exit side streets. The walls were constructed with coarse basalt blocks and reinforced with stone and mud, but the stones, except for the thresholds, were not dressed and mortar was not used. The most extensive part of the typical house was the courtyard, where there was a circular furnace made of refractory earth, as well as a grain mill and a set of stone stairs that led to the roof. The floors of the houses were cobbled. Around the open courtyard, modest cells were arranged, which received light through a series of openings or low windows, and you can see those here and here. So these are small places, and they lived in these small community areas. Yeah.
So they sleep on the roof then, or what do they do on the roof?
Some of them did when it got really hot, but yeah, no, they would sleep inside though too. Given the coarse construction of the walls, there was rarely a second story to a typical home, and the roof would have been constructed of light wooden beams and thatch mixed with mud. So they really probably didn't hold a lot of weight. A study of the district located between the synagogue and the octagonal church showed that several extended families clustered together communally using the same courtyards and doorless internal passages. The houses had no hygienic facilities or drainage, and the rooms were narrow. Most objects found were made of clay, pots, plates, and lamps. Fish hooks, weights for fish nets, striker pins, weaving bobbins, and basalt mills for milling grain and preserving olives were also found. And so this is that right here. So between here, this is the edge of the church, and here's the synagogue. And so this is what it was talking about right in here. So yeah, here's the synagogue. Looked kind of cramped. I would think that the walls would have been a bit higher because that would not have been comfortable, I don't think, to stand up in. So this is an interesting picture. So you see this this wall here. So that, and this was true all over the Holy Land, but they had different denominations claimed different places as the site of some of these holy sites. And so this, where we're at, was claimed by the Catholic Church, the Franciscans. And over here, now I don't know this 100%, but I want to say that this was claimed. So you can see this church here, claimed by the Orthodox Church, and I'm not sure which branch of the Orthodox Church, whether it was Greek or Russian or what, but and so this wall was built to separate the two sites. And so, you know, of course, our tour guide, as he always would say, is, you know, so if this is not the real Capernaum, I mean, how far, right? So. One block of homes called by the Franciscan excavators the Sacra Insula or Holy Insula, insula refers to a block of homes around a courtyard, was found to have a complex history. Located between the synagogue and the lake shore, it was found near the front of a labyrinth of houses from many different periods. 3 principal layers have been identified. And so this is what we're talking about right here. This is what is believed to be St. Peter's home. And so so they found this site, and there was 3 principal layers. So the first layer, a group of private homes built around the 1st century BC, which remained in use until the early 4th century. And then the great transformation of one of the homes into a 4th century church. And then the octagonal church in the middle of the 5th century. And so you can see how it was expanded and built upon. So, like I said last week, pretty much all of these holy sites they plopped a church right down on top of it. So right above here, this is the church, the Catholic Church, the modern day one. The excavators concluded that the one house in the village was venerated as the house of Peter the fisherman as early as the mid-1st century. And so the mid-1st century, so this was probably, you know, if this wasn't it, how far, right? Let's see. With 2 churches having been constructed over it. So it was very early on, it was identified as the site of Peter's home, where Jesus likely would have used as his home base. So here's a better shot of it. Now, the church itself that day, they had a worship service going on, so we weren't able to go up into the church. But I've seen pictures where right in the middle of the church, there's like a plexiglass floor, and you can see right down into this here area. But we weren't able to go in there. That's old though. And it's kind of hard to see in there, but you can see some of the black basalt rock. And quite honestly, it's a little hard to tell what of this is the church, what of that is Peter's home, or is this even Peter's home? It's just buried underneath it. I don't know. And I didn't hear that really clearly from Nadar, our tour guide. All right, so this is the synagogue, the wall, one of the walls. And according to Luke's gospel, the Capernaum synagogue at the time of Jesus's ministry had been built or funded by a Roman centurion based there. The ruins of a later building, among the oldest synagogues in the world, were identified by Charles William Wilson. The large ornately carved white building stones of the synagogue stood out prominently among the smaller plain blocks of local black basalt used for the town's other buildings. Almost all of those were residential. The synagogue was built almost entirely of white blocks of calcareous stone brought from distant quarries. And so you can definitely tell the difference in the two colors of the stone. And so this one was built much later, and the stones were obviously not from this area. So whoever built this must have been a fairly rich person to build that. And of course, these stones here are more original. So the synagogue appears, and this says late 4th century AD, white synagogue built upon the remains of the synagogue of Jesus. So it is believed that the black basalt stones of the earlier synagogue was the synagogue during the time of Jesus. The synagogue appears to have been built around the 4th or 5th century. Let's see. Yeah, and so this is believed to be the synagogue of Jesus. So though we really couldn't see the synagogue of Jesus, we could stand inside where the synagogue built on top of it was. And so you can see, or just imagine, a lot of Jews sitting in here, listening to the scroll being read and talked about. It was really kind of impressive, all that block and how much of that weighed. 2,000 years, it's still, at least parts of it are still standing. And there's been wars and strife all throughout that whole area. It's amazing any of it's still standing, quite frankly. And these are just some decorative stone pieces that they plopped on these metal frames just so you could see stars of David. That was just a wider view. You can really see here that big, long courtyard, or the long street in between the various groupings of houses. And this was just a really cool mosaic floor outside with a peacock. Now, I don't remember. Do you remember this? What the peacock represented? It had a symbolism for the church, but I couldn't remember exactly what it was. And I forgot to look it up. But the peacock had symbolic meaning for the early church, and I can't remember now what it was. And then here's a statue of St. Peter. And so it really was right along the Sea of Galilee. And so you could tell that it was a fishing village right there.
There's the picture of the toilets.
Oh.
There's a big sign that says pay.
I don't know what kind of plant this was, but it was really big. I mean, almost as tall as me. So I took a picture of it. It was really cool. All right, so we left Capernaum and we went to Bethsaida. And according to John 1:44, Bethsaida was the hometown of the apostle Peter, Andrew, and Philip. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, Jesus reportedly restored a blind man's sight at the place just outside the ancient village of Bethsaida. In Luke 9, Jesus miraculously feeds 5,000 near Bethsaida. And although Bethsaida is believed to be located on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee, there's disagreement among scholars as to precisely where. Since the 19th century, 3 places have been considered as the possible location of the biblical Bethsaida. The Bedouin village of, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to pronounce these right, Bedouin village of Mesadieh, the small deserted settlement of El Araj, or House of the Bay, and the archaeological site of Et Tel, which is where this is. Over time, the latter two, so Et Tel and then the El Araj, have come to appear more likely places of, while Mesadieh and El Araj are closer to the Sea of Galilee, Et Tel shows significant archaeological remains, including fragments of fishing equipment. No trace of the name Bethsaida has been found in the district, but any one of the 3 named sites would meet the requirements for Bethsaida. And so, I mean, this one didn't seem to be as well preserved. I don't know if it was as much of a tourist attraction as, like, say, like Capernaum, and there was no church built here. But I mean, you can definitely see the outlines of buildings. And it really did seem as though there was a fishing presence here. Sheep. Fisherman's house. But the problem with this location is look how far away the Sea of Galilee is. Over a mile away. And I'll get here to that. So the first excavations of the site were conducted in 1987 to 1989 by the Golan Research Institute. In 2008 to 2010 and in 2014, archaeological excavations of the site were conducted by Rami Arav on behalf of the University of Nebraska of Omaha. And then, yeah, Hastings College is in here and Doane College. So according to Arav, the ruin of Et Tel is said to be Bethsaida, a ruined site on the Jordan, east side of the Jordan on rising ground, 1.2 miles from the sea. This, of course, poses a problem insofar that if it were a fishing village, it is situated far from the shore of the Sea of Galilee. So in an attempt to rectify the problem, the following hypotheses have been devised. So there's 3 hypotheses as to why it's not closer to the sea. So the first one is tectonic rifting has uplifted Et Tel. The site is located on a great African Syrian rift fault. So maybe there was, some sort of earthquakes or tectonic action that lifted it up. The water level has dropped from increased population usage and land irrigation. In fact, the excavation of Magdala's harbor has proven that the ancient water level was much higher than it is today. So maybe the water levels dropped and it used to be a lot closer. But, if you think about that, it seems a little strange too, because if the water level was higher, Capernaum would have been flooded because Capernaum was right there next to the water.
Is it a combination of all three?
And the third one is the Jordan River Delta has been extended by sedimentation. So it could have been something of all three. But anyway, so that's kind of interesting. We didn't stay there very long. We got out, walked around a little bit, and got back on the bus. So these were date trees or plants, or I think they were trees. But there was just fields of these things, and they were all covered with netting. I'm assuming for bugs and birds and what else. But dates are a really big export.
They're huge.
Yeah.
Big things.
Mhm.
I think the farm they brought in.
Well, we had some that were processed,
Yeah, he
like a piece of candy.
Yeah, he bought some for the bus. He bought a package for the bus. I think when we were over in Jericho, I think,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
that was a Jericho.
I'm not a big fan of dates, and I think it's more of a texture thing for me.
Yeah, me too. I didn't eat one.
They look like giant prunes. No, thank you. I don't like prunes either. Yeah. All right, this here is the Valley of the Doves, and we stopped here for a fairly short trip, and it was really beautiful. It doesn't have a lot of significance as far as a historical site for Christians, but it does have some significance. The imposing cliffs of Mount Arbel in Galilee, this is right here. The path from Nazareth via Cana to Magdala passed through this Valley of the Doves and is between the cliffs, linking in with the old Roman Via Maris, Way of the Sea. Jews from Magdala hid from the Romans in the caves of Mount Arbel, and you'll see some of the caves, during the revolt of the Jews in AD 67. So when the Jews revolted against the Romans in 67, which caused the destruction of the temple in AD 70, some of the rebels hid in these cliffs from the Roman soldiers, and they held out for quite a while. Jesus traveled this route on his way to Capernaum. But it was a really pretty walk. I mean, and we kind of had to get in and out of here fairly quick because the wind was picking up, and we were going to be going to the Sea of Galilee and riding across that day. And he was trying to get us moving so we could get across the Galilee. But so here's, so you can, I don't know if you can see them. Here's some caves up in here. I think here's an even better shot. You can actually, this is scaffolding right here. And you could walk up there. We didn't get that far. And our bishop wanted to, this was his second year going, and he said to himself that next year, he said, when I go, I'm gonna climb to the top of that thing. So we tried, or at least myself, the bishop, and then one other lady. We tried to get up to the top. Some of us followed about halfway up, but you can see there's a large group down here that didn't walk up. Did you walk up at all?
I went a little ways until I turned around and could see how far down the way. And I'm going home. Needless to say, it wasn't real far.
But so our tour guide was trying to get us to come down from the hill because the wind was picking up, and he wanted to get us over. But we had those earpieces in so we could hear the tour guide. And once you got a little ways up there, it was starting to break in and out, and we couldn't hear him then. And so we were getting text messages, and I'm saying to the bishop, I'm like, they're wanting us to come back down. He says, oh, let's go a little bit farther. And so we just kept going. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm following the bishop. We're not going to leave him. And so we kept going. But we got up there quite a ways. That was a pretty good view. So here we are.
Look at that, the higher you are, the better view.
Yeah, that may be true, but
It was fun though.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, you can see, we got pretty close to the cliff. It was right here, but, and you could have kept walking up and around and you could have gotten up on top, but we had to get going. He reluctantly said, okay, let's go. All right, the ancient Galilee boat. So the ancient Galilee boat, also known as the Jesus boat, is an ancient fishing boat. You'll see some pictures here in a minute. From the 1st century AD, discovered in 1986 on the northwest shore of the Sea of Galilee in Israel. The remains of the boat, 27 feet long, 7.5 feet wide, and 4.3 feet deep, first appeared during a drought when the waters of the sea, actually a great freshwater lake, began to recede. So they had all the water started to recede down quite a bit, and then they came across this boat. This is what it would have looked like brand new. You'll see what's left of it here in a minute. This is a small scale model, but this is what a fishing boat of the time of Jesus would have looked like. You can imagine fitting about 12 people in it, about 12 disciples. So this is what Jesus and his disciples probably would have used to get across. And so there was some room for oars, but it also had a sail too. So here's what the boat looks like. When they were excavating the boat from the mud without damaging it quickly enough to extract it before the water rose again, it was a difficult process, which lasted 12 days and nights. The ancient wood was extremely fragile when exposed to the atmosphere, and the boat had to be rescued from the place it was found by wrapping it in a mantle of fiberglass and insulating foam, which helped with both keeping it together and floating it to its new location. So you know that foam insulating spray that you can fill cracks with, that's basically what they covered it with. So as they uncovered it from the mud, they would spray it with that, basically encasing the whole thing. And then they had to dig underneath it, and they finally got it out. And then it floated because it was on this foam. And then it took a little while to get it off, but then they had to be submerged in a wax bath for 12 years. This is according to Wikipedia. I don't know. Which protected the boat before it could be displayed at the Yigal Allon Galilee Boat Museum in Kibbutz Gennesaar. The boat's construction conforms to other boats built in that part of the Mediterranean during the period between 100 BC and 200 CE. Constructed primarily of cedar planks joined together by pegged mortise and tenon joints and nails, the boat is shallow drafted with a flat bottom, allowing it to get very close to the shore while fishing. However, this boat is composed of 10 different wood types, suggesting either a wood shortage or that the boat was made of scrap wood and had undergone extensive repeated fixes. The boat was rowable with 4 staggered rowers and also had a mast allowing for fishermen to sail. It was pretty neat. But so that boat was in the water during Jesus's life. Now, there's of course no proof that he actually sailed on this boat, and he likely didn't, but yeah. All right, so from there we went to the dock and we got on our boat to head across the Sea of Galilee to where we ate lunch. But it was really pretty, and I think I said this last week too, but I imagined reading scripture and I'd read this about this, that that it was all barren and flat leading up to the sea. And it wasn't. I mean, you can see all these hills. It's in a valley. And then the cheap plastic chairs that we had to sit in. And you'll see why that was a bad idea later. You remember seeing that? Yeah. But it was really, I don't know, it took maybe 45 minutes or so to get across is all. It'd take
Yeah,
long.
It probably wouldn't have taken that long if that hadn't been for the wind.
Yeah.
They have a motor on it or?
Yeah. Well, and you know, on the way over, it was fine. It was when we pulled into,
Well, we pulled it, yeah, it got a little rough going over, but nothing you wouldn't expect.
they could get up and walk around.
Yeah,
But when we pulled in,
That's
that was a
when it
different
got bad.
story. So here's all of us. There was quite a few folks there. I don't know how many were in our group, what, like 40 people or so? Or no,
35,
Judy said this morning, 38.
38, it was 30 something.
And then with the tour guide and the bus driver, that was 40 people. But you can start to see some of the white caps. But you could see the other side. I mean, it's not a huge lake. Here's really starting to see the waves. Yeah,
It was windy,
it was windy.
chilly.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, let me go back here. If I'm remembering correctly, this hill here, I think it was this hill, is where, let me go back here a little bit. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's the hill where it is believed to be where Jesus gave his Sermon on the Mount.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, I remember him saying that. Oh, I think he said it on the bus. Not when we were out there.
Oh, I might have my things in.
Anyway, so we were getting to the other side, and it was getting really rocky as we slowed down. And we were coming in, and we had to actually pull in and pull back out 3 times because the waves were just pushing us all over the place. And as we were approaching, the guy next to me, he starts pulling out these big, thick, heavy ropes, and he looks over at him and he says, "We only pull these out like once or twice a year." I'm like, yeah. So-
Say that.
And so they're taking these big ropes and they're throwing them to the guys on the docks, and they're trying to pull us in. And then you can see like there was boats all around us, and you can see they had the tire bumpers, and we actually ran into one of the boats. And of course, I was feeling guilty, but I'm like, why am I feeling guilty? This isn't my boat. I'm not the one driving it. But anyway, so the bishop, I don't know why he got up. He got up for something, and he ended up falling and bowling over everybody in these cheap plastic chairs. And nobody was hurt, but everybody was laughing about it. But at any rate, it was fun, memorable. Yeah. So then we ate lunch, and we had some soup, and there was always a bunch of flatbread. And I think there was a,
No, that good bread was in Jerusalem.
yeah,
That oval,
yeah.
that was.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that wasn't bad.
Yeah. And they had hummus at every meal, of course, too.
What kind of soup?
I don't remember what it was.
I didn't have
It was good.
it. Had anything to do with hummus. There, that's what I had.
And that's the fish. So this is what's called St. Peter's fish, but it's tilapia. That's what it is. And they fry it. And they gave you 2 options. You could have it with the head or without the head. I thought, well, I'll be adventurous and let's just leave the head on. And so they fried it. I thought it was kind of bland. I mean, it was okay, but
I don't like to work that hard for my dinner.
yeah, and you had to take the skin off, and the bones were still in there, so you had to eat around the bones.
And it's not that the meaty of fish either. is it?
Huh?
It's not that meaty.
No,
Fish either.
no, it's not.
Okay, what's that thing laying back on the tail?
Lemon.
It's a lemon, yeah.
Oh, that's a lemon?
Yeah, with lemon. It's a lemon half to squeeze over the top. And I guess when I eat fish, I like it grilled, not fried. So anyway. So after we went there, we went to the Jordan River. And, of course, reading Bible and reading about the Israelites crossing the Jordan River into the promised land, I imagined this big, huge river like the Platte River or something, or the Missouri River. But no, it was this little small thing. So it wasn't very big. It's the Jordan River is 156 miles long, of course, flowing north to south through the Sea of Galilee, and it ends up over where the Dead Sea is. So this is where they did the baptisms. And so, Shirley and Sharon were the only two from our church that did it. There were a few others there though too. And see, I know I videoed this and I sent you the video, but I can't find the videos anywhere anymore.
I wonder if well, you know how
I'm sure I have them somewhere on a disc
I'm
somewhere.
sure somebody does, yeah.
So Sharon was first. And now she's out. She's all wet. And here's Shirley, she's getting ready. And now she's done. And I don't know. What was your experience? You want to share about it?
Well, I mean, of course, I was baptized, but I don't remember being baptized, I guess. That would be the only thing when you're a baby and baptized, you don't remember, but you go through different things about your religion. But I don't know, it just felt like something I needed to do in my adult life.
Well, and to be clear, the bishop was clear about this. This was not a rebaptism. This was just a remembrance of your baptism. Oh, so it was actually kind of funny because the bishop ended up baptizing. So like this lady here, she was not part of our group, but she wanted to be baptized. And so he baptized her. She had not been
Wasn't that her
baptized.
initial baptism?
Yes.
I heard
Oh,
somebody
yeah.
say that she'd never been baptized.
No, she hadn't. So that was really cool. So after we were there for quite a while, and then the rest of us, the elders who had been ordained that year, we had little bottles of water from the Jordan. So if anybody wanted to remember their baptism but not go in the water, we did the sign of the cross on their forehead and said, "Remember your baptism and be thankful," and with the river water. So our next stop, our last stop actually, was Magdala. And Magdala was not originally on our itinerary, but it was something that he offered to take us to, our tour guide, and said it's worth seeing. And so everybody voted to go ahead and do it. So we did. And Magdala was an ancient city on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, 3 miles north of Tiberias, which is where we stayed. In the Babylonian Talmud, it is known as Magdala Nunea, Aramaic meaning Tower of the Fishes. And some historical geographers think may refer to Tarichaea, literally the place of processing fish. It is believed to be the birthplace of Mary Magdalene. And until the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, a small Palestinian Arab village, Al-Majdal, stood at the site of the ancient Magdala. While nowadays, the modern Israeli municipality of Migdal extends to the area. The Migdal Synagogue, which is right here, is an ancient synagogue located in Israel on the shore of the Sea of Galilee, part of an archaeological site of the ancient Magdala. The synagogue was in use in the Second Temple period, 50 BC to 100 CE, one of several found to date from that period, and includes a carved stone representing the menorah, the 7-branched candelabrum that was located in the temple, making it the oldest such representation in the Jewish context, and one that appears to have been made by an individual who had seen the menorah in the temple. It is one of the oldest synagogues in Israel. So this is the synagogue would have been there when Jesus walked around. And the cool thing about this, though, is that if this really was where Mary Magdalene was from, and though the scripture doesn't say that Jesus was ever here, it does say that multiple locations that Jesus went in and around Capernaum in the area of the northern Galilee, preaching and teaching in the synagogues. And so it says that he went to a bunch of different places in Galilee, and he likely came here. And as he says, if not here, how far, right? So it was just really cool to think that Jesus was most likely here. And so here were the benches where people sat to listen to the scroll being read. Here was the ark, and more benches back here.
That's original mosaic in there too, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Wider shot. Small
I don't know
synagogue.
how they cut those pieces so precise and lasted so long. It was
How'd they-
amazing.
How'd they glue them or concrete them down to hold them in place? After all this
They
time?
didn't. The really big blocks, they did. I mean, they were heavy enough and they were cut precisely enough that they just fit into place. Didn't require mortar. I mean, they weren't going to go anywhere. So, hey, Ruth. We're almost done. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Ruth?
Yes, I can.
Okay, we're actually almost done.
I know. I'm sorry.
Well, it's okay. Well, you can listen in on the end of it. This is Magdala that I'm talking about, and where Mary Magdalene was from. And you know what? So let me close that now. All right. Well, oh, good. They'll let me move it. Okay. So, yeah, these are pictures of the synagogue. So we're gonna keep going here. So this was, like it said in there, it was a fishing village. These were some containers that would have held fish. I'm not sure if these were just nurseries for the fish or just holding ponds or what exactly they were, but this is where they would have held some of the fish. It wasn't a very large town. And we didn't stay here too terribly long either. And especially we didn't stay long around the ruins. We walked directly over to the church, which we're going to get to here in a second.
Where was this at, Pastor Kurt?
In Magdala.
Magdala. Okay, thank you.
So this was the Duke, and I'm going to get this wrong too. Duke in Altum is the name of the church. DUCINALTUM. This church was a place of prayer, teaching, and worship for Christians of all backgrounds and denominations. The building is dedicated to the public life of Jesus, his transforming encounters, and honors the women of the Bible and all women of faith through its women's atrium. The church draws its name from Luke 5:4, where Jesus instructs Simon Peter to launch into the deep or put out into deep water. The edifice is composed of 6 chapels. So you remember how when we were looking at the church in Bethlehem last week, I said that all these old churches have these little tiny chapels in inset. You're going to see more of those here, including the main boat chapel. So and I didn't get a picture in here of the boat chapel, but there was a larger chapel that had a replica of the boat, of a fishing boat. And there were 4 smaller lateral mosaic chapels, an atrium dedicated to women, as well as a lower level encounter chapel with an impressive mural. And we'll see that here in a second. So here was a living water baptismal font. And so you might remember reading in scripture where it talks about living water. Jesus talks about living water all the time. Living water was water that was not stagnant, that was kept flowing. And so you might go into churches that have baptismal fonts that are just continually flowing. And so that's what that is. So here's one of those chapels with the mosaics depicting the life of Jesus. And here Jesus was healing somebody. And Jesus calling the disciples on the lake. There's a closer shot of that. So all these little tiny stones inlaid in there. And then, Jesus walked on the water to Peter, who stepped out of the boat and then freaked out and started to sink. Now, I'm not really sure what this one was. This must have been the one where Jesus takes banishes the demons from Mary in the Bible. Just because of Magdalene Mary. So I think I can't read that, but that's what I'm assuming that says, something to do with Mary. Also a picture of it. And then in the basement is the painting called The Encounter, painted by Daniel Cariola. Portrays one of the most significant miracles in the gospel from Mark chapter 5, verses 28 through 29. Because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. And so you can see where the power is coming out of Jesus into her. That was pretty cool. And you can order prints of that online. But it took up a whole wall. All right, well, that's it. And then we went back to the hotel room.
Fish actively in the Sea of Galilee.
I don't think they do commercial fishing in the Sea of Galilee. You can probably fish in there.
Yeah,
But I didn't
that's
see
what
anything.
I saw anybody fishing.
So, you know what? I guess I shouldn't say I don't know. I don't know. It didn't appear that there was any commercial fishing going on at the time anyway. I suppose it's possible. So. Sorry, the other camera pointing out to everybody is not working. So that you can see who's here. All right. So yeah, those were the pictures. Any questions or thoughts? Ruth, this is being live streamed. So you can, as soon as we hang up the call, you can go to our YouTube channel. You can watch it.
Okay, thank you.
And you weren't here last week, were you?
Yes,
Oh, you were? Okay. Well, you can
Yes.
watch last week's again too if you want to. So.
Okay.
Okay, well, good. But yeah, you can watch what you missed. So.
okay,
Yeah,
that's great. Thank you.
welcome. So next week we'll do day 2 or day 3, sorry, and we actually leave the Galilee area and head to Jerusalem. And we start seeing some of the sites south in the southern part of Jerusalem or of Israel. So, all right. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of the week and hopefully we'll see you Sunday in worship.
Bye, Ruth.
Bye. Sorry I was late.